And then we also have more information about Oak Life Sprouts, which is on Instagram now. And we have a video more on what's going on with Sprouts. I'm not sure the video.
Oh, no, not a video. Just
Okay, cool. And then also we do have a member of the community in need. So if you are able to help in any way, if you don't mind scanning the QR code, the title on this one for anyone who wasn't here before is Oak Life Church, help them create a cozy home. So we do at times have call outs if someone is in need or just has some sort of need that you might be able to help with. And same thing with generosity. If you are able to, we appreciate any ability you have to help out. So you can go to oaklifechurch.com/generosity. And it can always be a one-time thing, or it can be more regularly if you're able to. But that's how we typically run it on the website as well. If you want to check out on there for more information, or if you want to talk to Greg for more information before that is on. And does anybody have any other announcements they want to share or plans for things going on?
Hey, so just to connect the threads, so excited that church has continued to these next week, and then board game group is meeting after that. A nice way to like continue on from church shit next Sunday. Just would like connect those threads for y'all. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else might have something to share? Performances or other events going on around things? Thank you, Oka. And we have our guest speaker today, so please welcome.
Just a heads up. We got one more announcement after this, I think.
Oh, okay.
Right in the chair chats. Let's go.
Cool. So chair chats. So we will be circling up. Just look around you and see if you can create a little pod of your own. Doesn't matter how big or small. But just to include everybody and going over these questions for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it falls. Yeah.
Everything.
About 1 more minute, 60-second warning till we continue service. Wrap those chats up. All right, let's bring it on back to life community. Let us bring it on back. For all of those who are watching in the online realm, thank you for your steadfast endurance. As it was stated earlier, we are navigating AV stuff, and we are just doing our bestest. We're doing our bestest, so thank you for rocking with us. If you are in house today, welcome. Make some noise for yourselves. Yo, like these are Easter numbers. These are like Christmas Sunday numbers. Okay. So if you are new and checking this out for the first time, we're almost this cool. We're almost this cool in real life. Okay. My name is Greg. I'm one of two pastors that steward this community. Oak Life is just a group of everyday individuals doing our best to live, love, fight, and follow as Jesus did and does. So thank you for spending time, spending energy here with us. We're going to do things a little differently this Sunday. We're still in our series, Reclaiming Church, and we're still navigating conversations of that theme. But today we have a guest speaker, and I feel like at least 30% of you are here for that reason. But to continue, and that's humble. That's humble. But for those who are maybe still in the know, I'm going to keep the suspense going. I'm just going to read about said guest speaker. So today's guest speaker is an award-winning sociologist, speaker, and activist, completing her PhD at Rice University, where she researches the intersections of race, religion, and politics. She is published in top academic journals, including Social Forces and Sociology of Race and Ethnicity, as well as in public outlets like LA Magazine. This person has been featured in CNN, Time, ABC, LA Times, among other outlets over the last decade. They have served Asian American communities, organizations, and taught Asian American studies. Through their work in academia and the community, this individual is committed to the practice of solidarity and collective liberation. So today is fun because this is an old friend of Oak Life. Back in the day. And Chris, if I'm not mistaken, officiated this person's wedding, and it was just fun time and watching them grow both in person and in the social media realm. It's just been a joy. And to couple that, we actually are going to be inviting up two people. So we have one old friend and we have one new friend. So I want you with as much gusto as your hands can muster to generate some noise for Bianca and Ciara. Come on.
I'm so excited to be here with Bianca. I was lucky enough to know Bianca during my undergraduate education at UC Berkeley. She was doing university, and I also was doing some university. And my grandfather passed away last year, and he had a favorite word, which is mudita, which is a Sanskrit word that means taking joy in another person's success, another person's rise. And to see you here now, after I had such a formative experience with you as a young person, after you've spoken to my life, after I had a chance to see the amazing work you did in university and now at Rice University, is truly an honor. So I just want to say thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, it's so fun to be here. This is the last event. What I mean last event, I'm flying out this afternoon. My last event here on the West Coast, and it's fun to be back in the Oak Life community where I attended for a few years before 2020 when y'all were still meeting in the New Parkway. It was the first spiritual space post-evangelicalism and post-intervarsity that I should figure my shit out in, right? And yeah, I'm honored to have Greg introduce us and Sierra, who I know is newly part of this community as well. And so with that said, I'm going to, actually before I say that, I also wanted to recognize one more person, Harvey Dong in the back with East Wind Books. Yes. We have a legend in our midst. Harvey and his wife Bee were on the front lines in the 1960s and 70s in the Asian American movement, fighting for civil rights and the anti-war movement, the fight for ethnic studies, which is also prominent and the context of where my book comes from. My book, and I wouldn't be here if not for their work as young folks, but also now doing so much community organizing and gathering here in the Bay Area. And so this isn't just a plug to go buy my book back there, but also a plug to just check out their community and their work. They have upcoming events as well with a report back from folks who went to Palestine. So be sure after this to go say hi to Harvey. Okay, with that, this is a little bit different. It's not a typical sermon. I'm actually going to do a reading from my book. This is going to be more like a book talk, and Sierra has some questions, and then we'll have actually a community discussion. So I'm going to read a little bit from a chapter called Church Camp. I struggled to find my way out of evangelicalism, and as a first step, attended a queer affirming conference for LGBTQ+ Christians and allies. On the last night of the conference, I randomly encountered a multi-generational table of Asian Americans at our conference hotel, from youth to elders. I went to the conference knowing hardly anybody and had planned to eat by myself, but this table of Asian Americans eagerly waved me down to go sit with them. Their aggressive hospitality reminded me of my immigrant Chinese church. In fact, they looked like a post-Sunday service hang, loud, loitering, and unmovable. I was simultaneously intrigued and triggered. As I sat at this table of familiar strangers, I learned that they were part of Evergreen Baptist, a traditionally conservative Chinese immigrant church that recently became queer affirming. I ate with their queer youth, queer affirming pastors, and several elders who attended the conference because they simply wanted to learn. I sat across from an older woman in her 60s. She spoke in a thick Cantonese accent about how she had failed to accept her daughter when she came out to her decades ago. She was now trying to repair their relationship, but had been pained with remorse for having let her theological beliefs rob them of so many years together. As I listened to her story, I felt grief for her and her daughter. And at the same time, I felt strangely comforted. I wouldn't expect to ever hear from my former friends from InterVarsity or my immigrant Chinese church apologize and admit we were wrong. But now, sitting across from me was this auntie who once held the same destructive beliefs as they did, admitting she was wrong. Her regret was validating, and her estrangement from her daughter was cruelly comforting because it reflected my own estrangement from my spiritual community. We somehow found each other, and at least for a moment, were a little less isolated. Maybe I reminded her of her daughter because she and her friends surely reminded me of the aunties at FCBC, my Chinese immigrant church, who I had to break ties with once I came out. As I got to know different members of their church over the serendipitous meal, they provided a hospitality that felt like home and expressed a sense of deep remorse and repentance that made me feel close to justice. Their church's transformation and my healing became intertwined. Today, I feel mostly ambivalent about church to protect myself from further disappointment. I keep my distance, but evangelicals, God, church in particular, somehow continue to find me. My first summer in Houston, I witnessed my mother-in-law gather dozens of church ladies from their evangelical Filipino congregation to pull together a last-minute bridal shower for her niece Mary, who had lost her mom when she was young. The church ladies barely knew Mary, and many of them met her for the first time at her own bridal shower, yet they all took on the role of chosen family. Prepared lechon and pancit, bridal party games, a photo booth, and a corner of the room full of gifts for the couple to start their new lives. These titas stepped up to serve as surrogate mothers. They blessed and celebrated this young woman, making sure she had maternal support for her big day. This is what Asian churches do. They fill in the gaps for one another. There is no community care like a church meal train after a congregant gives birth or loses a family member. I've seen church members cover each other's hospital bills, provide housing and jobs, offer childcare, and even sponsor one another's visas to immigrate. The Asian immigrant church is the most socialist site I've ever witnessed. When working for InterVarsity, I had to fundraise my living expenses as well as the cost of operating the ministry, and it was my immigrant church that made that happen. There's an unspoken expectation to take care of one another inherently embedded in Asian ethnic churches. It is our cultural value for interconnectedness and interdependence that gets put on overdrive in immigrant church, where everyone's needs are understood and provided for. The ethnic church remains a refuge and a source of real career otherwise covered by whiteness. I miss it. I want to be part of this type of community again and raise my family in it. I want my child to be part of the intergenerational care, the meal trains, the youth groups, the larger village of ates and jijes and titas and hikis and wolas and pulpos. And at the same time, I am done with these spaces. The Sunday after the bridal shower, their pastor preached an anti-immigrant sermon about entering the country, quote, the right way to his predominantly immigrant congregation, several of whom are undocumented. This cognitive dissonance feels too heavy. The radical socialist care of the Asian church alongside its violent carceral theologies are irreconcilable to me. In my doctoral program, I spent extensive time at the Chinese immigrant evangelical church in Houston, very similar to my home church, to conduct research. It shocked me how seamlessly I was able to fit in. Like putting on evangelical cosplay, I brought my male partner with me because I knew heterosexual attachment to a man would legitimize my presence there. I knew what worship songs to sing. By the way, they're still singing Oceans. I knew to use language like discipleship and missional and loving on our neighbors, and how to speak with deference and stand behind my partner as I asked the male pastors for permission to interview their congregants. I knew how and what to hide, my politics, my weirdness, my ambivalent faith. I easily induced this Chinese immigrant church persona again, making myself nauseous in the process. My triple consciousness activated as I shrank myself to be palatable to the Asian evangelical gaze. Because I'm not out to my husband's evangelical family, I find myself employing this persona with my own family as well. I hide behind the fake, agreeable, and apolitical self, even if it's a facade, because I can't risk using another community again. As unassimilable and radical as these immigrant religious sites are, they also reproduce limited, racist frameworks and erect violent, heterosexist, patriarchal boundaries of belonging. My membership in these spaces and among evangelical families feels conditional to my agreeability. These spaces are dialectic, simultaneously helping us survive whiteness while converting us into the politics of whiteness. I don't know if these spaces are redeemable to me, and I don't know if they can ever feel safe to me. And yet, as much as I want to refuse them, they continue to feel like home.
Round of applause, please. It's actually going to be that section of the book, so it was really fun to go over it. And Oceans is an unfortunate banger. What can we do? Something that was so profound for me about reading as a school, and there's so many things that are profound, is it isn't easy to be someone who is in a PhD program, but to write in such an accessible and human way. And I'd love to maybe just interweave the personal, the spiritual, and the academic in such a seamless way for the reader. And so I'd love for you to tell us what led you to write on some of what personal, professional, faith-based experiences led you to create this really dynamic piece of art.
Yeah, so it's something I'm doing in spite of my PhD program because of the type of writing that's really encouraged where I'm at, right? What led me to write this? I first got the idea for it in 2021, and so that was we are still in the pandemic, but we were still very much kind of sheltered in place, and we were on the heels of the Atlanta spa shooting, the racial reckoning of 2020, the spike in anti-Asian hate crimes, and I was just noticing the discourse among mainstream Asian American more broadly. It was a lot of like, we don't deserve to be hate crimed because we belong here. We are Americans too. We pay taxes. We're good immigrants. And it was like, I don't want to belong here, right? Why in this moment where our belonging is obviously so conditional and America is kind of exposing itself to be hypocritical, why are we trying to prove ourselves and labor to belong and prove our citizenship when this is a moment to actually indict this country for its fallacies, its racism, its xenophobia and Orientalism, right? And so drawing from the tradition of Black radical politics and the politics of refusal, I was thinking about this term unassimilable, which was used in immigration policy to define certain communities as unassimilable, mostly Asian groups as unassimilable and ineligible for citizenship. And again, drawing out and wanting to articulate this politic of refusal, that we actually maybe don't want to belong here. That instead of laboring again to prove ourselves to whiteness, what if we divested and indicted whiteness in the American process? And at the same time, it's like the collective of what was happening. And personally, I was dealing with a lot of grief. My pawpaw, my grandma on my mom's side, had passed away like a month after the Atlanta spa shooting, in the midst of everything happening in the country. And I was thinking about her legacy and how, if you've read the book, the beginning is all about her and how she immigrated to the US in her 70s, and she refused to assimilate, and she was okay because of the Asian ethnoburb, right? And this concept of what if actually we thrive not by assimilating, but by refusing to assimilate, like the Asian ethnoburb where I grew up, that unapologetically caters to immigrants and has this vibrant, thriving ethnic ecosystem that allowed my grandma as an elder to have a third act, basically. So all of that kind of came together, and I was like, academia will not let me write this, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And something that's real about academic writing is it is only often accessible to those in a specific field. And so that's what I love about this text is you make sociology accessible to all of us. And as someone who doesn't exist in that field, it was just so fun to dive into this work and to learn more. And you mentioned the ethnoburb in which you grew up, San Gabriel Valley. And I have had my own experience living in an ethnoburb. I used to live in Koreatown in Los Angeles, which was a really interesting experience as a Black person in a Korean majority community. And I want to know, in this particular moment, especially under Trump's presidency, we're having this narrowing understanding of what it means to be an American. And so I'm curious what it means to be unassimilable in this moment and why this term is particularly important for someone of Chinese descent and for maybe the broader Asian diaspora as well. What does unassimilable mean for a community that has been painted as a model minority as a way to create separation between Asian communities and Black and Latino communities? I'm just curious your thoughts on all that.
Yeah. I mean, the model minority, unfortunately, I'm tired of talking about this, but I think we still need to talk about it. Right?
Yeah.
It's the stereotype that Asian Americans are, again, the good immigrants. And part of the model minority is that we are apolitical and not disruptive or rebellious. And unassimilable, again, is a politic of refusal, of active rebellion, active resistance to disrupt the status quo of this country, which I feel is probably necessary in this moment if we're going to make it, not just through the next 4 years, but through the collapse of the US empire, right? And so in this particular moment for me as a person in the Chinese diaspora, it's also to share very vulnerably and candidly, deconstructing the lies that not just this country, but so to back up a little bit, I'm Cantonese via Hong Kong, which has been a British colony. And to get into the weeds of it, I think because we have time for it, my family never actually identified as Chinese. We identified as Cantonese. And there was a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment growing up in my Cantonese family, even in Hong Kong, because it was like, well, the British chose us. Okay, colonial mentality, right? Like there's a lot of that and a lot of scholarship that has been written about that as well. And so I'm realizing in this moment, I have been so propagandized by not just the US empire, but the British Empire about China, about socialism, about like so many different things. And I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying that maybe a lot of what I have learned is wrong, or maybe it's a time to actually question what those messages are and how I've internalized them and how that has contributed to my own internalized racism and compulsory assimilation to distance myself from, again, my Chinese diasporic identity. And I was going to say one more thing. Yes, I'll just leave it at that for now.
No, absolutely. And as we think about something that I loved is you interweave in this text, experience in ethnoburb, and also your experience within white evangelicalism, which I thought was really fascinating. I love that section that you read. And I'm wondering for you, as we think about, particularly in a moment where we're seeing white evangelicalism and Christian nationalism shape a lot of US policy, what does being unassimilable mean when we think about faith practice or faith approaches? In the book, I see you kind of wrestling back and forth with what the church gave versus also how it was a limiting place as well. But I'm curious if this framework of unassimilable maps on to those of us who are POC that grew up in white evangelicalism and are looking to deconstruct these frameworks.
Yeah. Okay, to be very real, I don't know if I should say this in a church, but right now being unassimilable is preserving my Sunday mornings for myself. This is the first Sunday morning I've done something.
I love that, absolutely.
At a church, right? And everything in seasons, and there's seasons for everything. But yeah, I am not part of any kind of organized religious space right now. One thing has been going deeper into my own indigenous spirituality. So I've been reading a lot about Buddhism, and the ways that Thich Nhat Hanh kind of conceptualizes suffering has been very attractive to me, or at least like comforting to me recently. So actually exploring different faith traditions. I will say though, a missing piece of it is the community aspect. And I continue to kind of struggle with that churches are such a have expansive infrastructure for community, and now I do kind of feel like I'm on this like solo spiritually curious journey, and I've met individuals who are in a similar place, but I miss this, right, the gathering. But yeah, at the same time I'm like, I need my Sundays.
I love that. First of all, I didn't go back to church for years when I started deconstructing, and sleeping in on a Sunday felt like a radical act of refusal. So I'm right there with you. And I even said something I love about Oak Life is we start at 10 a.m. So thank you for that, Greg and Chris. Because if it's 8 a.m., I'm not getting there. So I completely understand. And something I loved as a reader reading your book is, although I wanted to make sure I maintained seeing unassimilable in the context of the Asian diaspora, it gave me so much as a Black reader to think about, what does it mean to be unassimilable in my sexuality, in my career, in my relationships, in my self-identity. It felt like this really expansive, radical framework that can help us all consider what it means to refuse to fit into small molds that actually limit who we are and who we want to be in the world. And so I'm curious for you, as you wrote this text, what did you really hope readers across identities and across backgrounds would leave with and understand more about themselves and the world around them?
Yeah, I think beyond, right, like wanting folks of the Asian diaspora to think more critically about why we are in diaspora, I also, I see writing as actually just a conduit for community. And I was talking to this visual artist in Houston. She's a South Asian visual artist, Ruhi, and she was conceptualizing her process of creativity and how she's like, some people make art to, because they have this creative impulse and they have to create something. And some people make art to make money and have a livelihood. Some people make art to be canonized, right? And it made me think, why did I write, and what is it that I want people to get out of it? And it really is community. It's not that complicated. I want people to connect and talk about
the book with each other and disagree about the book with each other. I think in particular, I talk about this towards the end of the book, but the hyper individualism and the isolation is violence and community is the antidote. And I don't think that can be understated. It could feel kind of like trite to say it, but it really is what will get us through climate crises. It will get us through political crises. And again, this current phase of America that we're in. And so it really is just, I'm not writing to be consumed. I'm writing because I want people to feel connection.
Yeah.
And I want to feel connection with people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I felt that in your text. I mean, we already are friends, but I felt like I understood you so much more reading this text, and it felt like a place that could bring people out of maybe their own sense of loneliness or isolation and into someone else's life, and helping them connect to the lives around them. So, just such a phenomenal text. And I have a million questions for Bianca. I will hog all her time, but I'd love to know if you all have some questions brewing, some thoughts, some reflections in the audience. If so, we'd love for you to ask them. Yep, you want me to come over there? You got it? Okay.
If you have a question, raise your hand and I will run this mic to you. Oh, instantly. Look at that.
Hi, good morning. Bianca, I wanted to ask, what role do you see youth activism playing in reshaping narratives around Asian American identity and belonging?
Yes, I love that question. Some context, we know each other. I know we know why we know each other, but I want the room to know why we know each other. Hamida runs Mantes Rey, which is an organization here in Oakland preventing human trafficking and particularly working with Southeast Asian youth here in Oakland. I've been so everywhere that I forget where I am. I'm in Oakland. And we knew each other because I used to work at Apilo with a youth program. And there's some former youth who I used to work with who are here. So shout out. I think a lot of what that has come to be my pedagogy and ethic and praxis comes from my time working with young folks, in that we don't think about how systemically and structurally we marginalize them. And just one example, I did a talk at a university recently, and there were some folks who weren't college students, some elder millennials. I am also an elder millennial who was there, and they were like, wow, like the youth had such interesting questions, and it's so comforting that the youth are gonna be okay. And I was like, of course they're gonna be okay. Are we gonna be okay? Because we're the ones failing them. I just felt like this paternalism, I'm not saying that, it was coming from a paternalistic place, but I think as we age, we maybe naturally just develop that posture that we know more, that we've experienced more, and we don't realize that the youth are feeling the violence of these structures in I think in a more tangible way than we realize. I think about I dropped my kid off at a daycare next to a high school, and everyone in that high school wears backpacks that are clear now. That's not a reality that I had growing up, because of the gun violence. I think about the mental health crisis. I think a lot of what the youth experience, we as older folks need to, again, have a posture as learners and take their cues and do everything we can to support their ideas and strategies. A lot of what I've seen in ethnic studies organizing that I write about in the book is, there's this idea that the youth are idealistic and they don't know how to actually navigate these systems. And so we might write off their ideas as being too grandiose. And I remember when I was working with the youth at Apilo, they would write grants and they would have these ideas, and I'd be like, this is a really big project you all are proposing, but I'm gonna let y'all do your thing. And they would prove me wrong. They would get it and they would execute it. And I would be humbled and realize I'm becoming old and irrelevant. But I think that's a good place to be in, right? Just to recognize and let the youth kind of lead us and for us, our job is to do everything we can to support their visions. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Hi, everyone. I'm Iris. I'm a Taiwanese American woman who grew up in the South, Alabama, Texas, also spent some time in Houston. So just really cool to see you here, Bianca. Thank you both for the work that you do. I have a question for each of you. Sierra, I was just curious to hear more of your experience living in LA, particularly in a Korean ethnoburb as a Black person, given the history of Los Angeles. And if you don't mind sharing about that, I'd love to hear. And then Bianca, I'm curious for your thoughts on how Asian people and Asian women, Asian Americans broadly, what role you think we have to play in this broader struggle for social justice and civil rights in a different kind of world.
You wanna go first? I can go first. My answer will be shorter. That's a great question. Thank you so much. And I'll keep it short and sweet because I really want to hear what you have to say about that secondary question.
Don't keep it short. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, so my life, I grew up in Sacramento, California, which Sacramento was like, in my opinion, kind of like a diverse oasis. Like I grew up with my high school, for example, was 25% Black, 25% AAPI, 25% white, and like 25% multiracial. So like it was this beautiful place where students across lines of identity and really got along. So that was always my experience, was having friends of various backgrounds and our families coming together and cultural exchange. My time in Los Angeles in general was actually a little bit depressing for me because the racial history there is a lot different. So I lived in K-Town and then I lived in East LA. So both areas where I was the minority. In K-Town, although culturally it was an amazing experience, the food, the music, it was so cool to be in a place I had never been and to be a visitor in another culture. I also had really difficult moments. I went into stores and was refused service pretty often. I had some pretty intensive experiences in my own apartment complex, misunderstandings that were hard. So it was my first experience experiencing like intra-community tension in that type of way with other POC communities. And I still am actually making sense of that experience. It's an experience I don't talk about often because I believe in solidarity so much. I believe in cultural exchange so much that I've been afraid if I come out with that experience, I will seem like I'm not for POC solidarity, although it was my own experience of anti-Blackness. So there were some beautiful experiences, but I would say in its whole, I did experience more anti-Blackness, particularly the refusal of service in a way I've actually never experienced in Northern California. So it was a complicated experience, one that I'm trying to make sense of. It's the first time I publicly tried to make sense of it. And I feel anxiety talking about it because I want to hold it with a lot of care. Because there's a history of racial tension in LA that I actually don't even quite know or quite understand. So it kind of felt confusing at times, isolating, but also beautiful. It was this amalgamation of all those things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Sierra. Before I get to your question, right, we can't talk about Asians in the US without talking about anti-Blackness. And that's a very prominent part of the book, and a motivating question of why I wrote it was to not just understand sociologically, but also interpersonally and personally what to do with and how to confront the anti-Blackness in my own community. And like you said, Sierra, be part of this larger collective healing so we can move forward with all of us together, right? And so, yeah, not to go into that chapter too much, but I go into my own experiences here in Oakland. So I did my undergrad at Mills.
Go
There's
Mills.
some Mills folks here.
Any Mills alum in here? Okay,
Yes,
okay.
multiple. RIP. Mills is no longer. A moment of silence. And in my freshman year, Oscar Grant got murdered at Fruitvale Station, which is the BART that I would take. And during my time, I lived in Oakland for 12 years. And so during that time, there were multiple waves the Black Lives Matter movement had always kind of, the movement for Black liberation had always been there, but different waves of visibility around the Black Lives Matter movement, particularly here in Oakland. And I knew I needed to unpack all of that time in Oakland, bearing witness to these movements and this violence in the book. And I explore kind of what it was like as a non-Black person of color, again, stereotyped as the good minority or the successful minority, bearing witness to this structure that is incredibly violent and anti-Black, and figuring out what is my place as an Asian person here, understanding and really unpacking what does it mean for me to be both a benefactor but also victimized by white supremacy. What does it mean that so much of my community in the ethno-burb is just totally disassociated, right? The community where I grew up, where everyone is pretty much homogenous because it was a safe haven from whiteness, have become disassociated from racial tension in this country and continue to look away from it. That was very uncomfortable for me, and I wanted to confront it in the book. And then what does it mean that there are Asian Americans who are like justice for Peter Liang? Okay, the cop, right, who killed Akai Gurley, who are coming out strong and organized and pro-police. And I talk about, not to spoil everything, you'll have to read the book. It's very juicy, I think. But yeah, yeah, and I don't land at a particular conclusion, but I wanted to kind of document the cacophonous tapestry that is Asian diasporic life and opinions and reactions to social movements, and really try to unpack the disassociation piece, how in our own assimilation, we have disassociated not only from racial struggle of other folks in this country, but even our own racial struggles. And the ways that, and one example I'll give is I was interviewing Asian American evangelicals in Houston, also in a very kind of ethno-burb diverse community. And it was during Trump's first term, and they would talk about white evangelicals, and they would say, they would try to differentiate themselves from white evangelicals. And they would say, oh, it's so unfortunate how these white evangelicals are so uncompassionate, was their language, towards Black and Latino people in this country. And I was thinking, you know, white evangelicals are also uncompassionate to Asian folks too. And so I thought it was interesting how folks were removing, even if they had some kind of opinion or discourse on race, they were removing themselves from the conversation. And so I really found, and I posit that disassociation is part of also what disassociates us from being in a really robust solidarity with Black folks, with other, you know, racialized communities here. Anyways, and it was like a process of me recognizing and coming out of my own disassociation and understanding, you know, and owning the racial pain that I've experienced. Yeah, all of that. I'm trying to, you had another question. Oh, about Asian women, yes. I mean, we just need everybody, right? And I think maybe sometimes we decenter ourselves because we're like, oh, we want to make room for other people, or this isn't my thing to speak on. I noticed that even with, you know, the movement for Palestinian liberation, like there were folks who, not just Asian women, well, a lot of people didn't want to say anything, but I noticed a particular dynamic over the years being in community with and working with a lot of Asian women, that we are hesitant or cautious to take the mic maybe because we want to defer to others who maybe are more impacted or maybe are more knowledgeable or have more experience. But our lives are also at stake. We have a stake in our movements. We have also, again, been victimized in a lot of different ways. And I think it's important in certain moments and movements to allow ourselves to be centered and to celebrate ourselves and our own resilience and the legacies of resistance where we have been actually, again, very crucial to social movements. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, just keep going and take up space. Yeah.
In your response, you helped me think more about my own anxiety about talking about Koreatown, is because my actual lived experience in my life has been Asian women have been some of my biggest champions, my biggest mentors, my biggest partners. Big folks that are, my mentor from Berkeley was my professor, a Vietnamese woman, first person I came out to, first person to champion my work, the person I still call today. And so something I see in my experience is it's more about, at least from my, and as I read your book, I thought more about what systemic myths have created this barrier between Black and Asian solidarity. That was the question I was left with, not anger or ire at my experience, but deep sadness that these systemic misconstructions have made it so we see our experiences sometimes as separate versus being spaces for solidarity and coming together. And I think you do such a beautiful job in her first chapter talking about the ethnoburb as a site of both solidarity and racial tension. And I just think you hold that so well. You gave me new language to talk about that as well. So I want us to say thank you for that. And thank you for your wonderful question. And we have time for one more question?
I don't want to be in front of the camera. Hi, my name is Gretchen. My pronouns are Hershey Sweet. And I'm going to recommend I'm going to put your book in my book club thing.
Come
'cause I
on.
get to choose the book this month, and we're an all Asian group except for my one white partner from Berkeley. So I'm like, sorry, hubby, or not hubby, ew.
You're welcome. You mean you're welcome.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
No, I was like, you're not
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
resonate, but you're gonna understand. But before I get to my question, I want to just thank you so much because around 2021, my mom, so I'm Filipino American, and my mom was like, why are all y'all so angry? Why are the younger people so angry, and you have to be angry right now and make it so violent? And I'm like, Mom, I get it. You came here in the 80s where to survive, you had to assimilate. But I was born and raised here along with many of my peers, and we're being told that who we are doesn't fit in and we're not accepted, and to go back to where. And I was just like, Mom, that basically, yeah, when I saw your book in Unassimilable, I'm like, that's what that feeling was. And to see my mom's light bulb go off was like, oh my God, am I gonna get sent to my room? Like she was so just like in awe of that. And so thank you for that. And then also as I came out to my mom in 2020. It was a whole thing. 2020,
Congratulations.
everyone, I like to say that there is that sad silver lining that community started to show up on the internet during our lockdown and everything. But as you were talking about the British colonization ideals, I want to know what it's like in your interracial couple with your partner who is Filipino with their American colonization kind of thing. Because again, with my family, my mom, she's just like, when I talk to her about like all the bad priests in the Catholic Church and all of the things, like, why do you still give so much to them? She's just like, well, they came and donated to us in the Philippines. I was able to eat that week because of the church and everything. And I just want to know how it shows up in your relationship, in your lives, because even now I'm still like, oh, but if the Philippines wasn't like this, or like we wouldn't be like this right now if it wasn't for America. And yeah, all of these things. And then also just a little thing. I run an LGBTQIA Asian support group at my org. And I mean, there's only 3 people in it right now, but I want to be able to connect in the future when there's more people. And if you'd like to come and talk to us. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question and sharing a bit of your family experiences and your experiences. And wow, what a transformation and evolution you had in the last few years. I think with the narratives about America, my family, I can understand it and somewhat identify it because my family has very similar narratives about the British. So in that sense, it's like colonized people's solidarity in our home. I don't, in terms of how it shows up, I mean, my partner doesn't engage with my family about these conversations, and I don't engage with their family because it's just like, it's not, I mean, part of it is because, the in-law relationship is a whole thing, and I want to kind of respect the boundaries of that. But I think in our home, it's been very interesting because my partner, who's a lot of you actually know, we became connected, I guess, in the Philippines. We went on a missions trip, embarrassing. But I think what was special about it was to Manila, and it was mostly a Filipino American, Asian American group that went. And so it was for most people a homecoming rather than going to a country in the global south to help them, right? And for a lot of folks, it was actually seeing family members for the first time in a long time. And so I think that kind of started his journey of unpacking why are there people living in garbage slums, and understanding that, you know, the answer of, oh, there's corruption in the Philippines is too simple and reductive of an answer and erases the role of Western imperialism. And so over the years, yeah, he's been doing his own unlearning. I've been doing my own unlearning. He's now like a TikTok influencer doing like anti-imperialist critique. And he's like reading all this stuff, and I'm like learning from, but we're mutually learning from each other and just trying to stay sane and get free, and with as much care as possible, like be part of the collapse of what we're seeing, because things must change if we are to survive, right? And to speak more explicitly about that, right? Like if we are to survive climate crises, our country cannot keep divesting from institutions here to bomb Gaza and Palestine and to be genociding other people, right? Like we cannot keep living, this is structurally, but it's also interpersonally in the hyper individualism of how we relate to each other. We cannot, like things cannot keep going like this. Not to be too apocalyptic about it, but really like we can't keep living like this if my child, who is a toddler right now, is gonna have a future. Like the world can't hold it all. The planet is like grieved, you know? And so anyways, all that to say, like we're just trying to survive and stay sane and be in community and do our part and pull back the veil from our own eyes of how we have, again, internalized so much propaganda and so many lies about, you know, like the fact that we live here like in modernity because the apocalypse has already come to many parts of the world that we brought, right? And that's why we have the luxuries that we have. And I think we have to confront those very uncomfortable realities, like even the reality of, so I had my child in 2023, 3 months before October 7th. And the juxtaposition of what it is like to mother in the US versus what it is like to mother in Gaza, from what I see on my screen, like I have to keep confronting that juxtaposition. And I have to lean into how uncomfortable it is that a lot of the comforts we have here is because of the destruction that the West brings to the global South. So I don't know, those are just our kitchen table conversations. It's very light, you know?
Just a light Tuesday chat.
Yeah.
Well, Bianca, it has been just an honor to sit here across from you as someone who's gotten to learn from you, and to continue to see your work blossom online to this incredible work of art. Please get her book, y'all. It is such a beautiful read. I've learned so much about sociology. It's a beautiful memoir. I've learned more about your life. And I think every reader will find something to connect to, something that feels like them in that text, which I think is powerful, and will learn something more about what it means to stand up, to be unassimilable in this moment, and to think more about creating solidarity, connection, and community, even in moments that feel politically fraught. And I think you just do such a beautiful job at leaving us with messages of hope and connection and care. So I want to thank you all for your amazing questions. Can we give Bianca a round of applause? Oh my goodness. Please get your copy today. And I'm going to be talking about this on my TikTok. So
Yes,
TikTok
follow
videos.
Sia,
Yes.
the gardening theologian. Yeah, thank you for having me. Harvey is back there with not just my book, but a lot of really awesome books, kind of in the spirit of Unassimilable. And yeah, thank you, Sierra, for reading and really seeing and receiving the book, and also me.
Yes, of course. Can we get a picture before we go? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Bianca.
Yo, that was so cute. Always time for a photo op. Keep that round of applause. Get it louder for Ciara MC. Let's go, Bianca with the bars. My gosh. It is so good to see and experience and hear from you again. And we wanted to respect her. She got to go. She got to fly. Busy people do busy things. That was a lot. That was a lot to ingest, a lot to think through, a lot to process, and nothing that we can put a period on per se in this moment. However, we want to have some time and some space to reflect. So in this next time, as we have our friend come lead us in a couple of songs, take the space to do what you feel is necessary to tend to your spirit after hearing all of that. If that's, well, I gotta go, feel free. If you want to sing, if you want to stand, if you want to sit, there's community elements in the back to take communion if you like. There's also a community bucket. If you have ability to put into that bucket, it doesn't go to Oak Life, it goes to whoever's in need in the community. We take care of each other by taking care of each other. So again, listen and be led in this moment. I'll pray and then we'll continue with some songs. Holy Spirit, God of love, God of life, God of community, for all of the sentiment and the wisdom shared here, what a gift it is to have such experience and such insight and such opportunity into the intimate lives of one another. Let it tend to our spirit. Let us give us the fuel that we need to continue to love each other as you love us. We thank you, we honor you, we lift your name up. In Jesus' name, we pray these things. Amen.
Ironically, we're actually going to sing Oceans. Because I've been reclaiming these things, you know, but if you don't like it, don't sing it. I get it. I see you. But otherwise, we'll vibe it out because it's a banger. Yeah. Oh, shit. Whatever. I lost my pick, but we don't need it. All right. Okay. Cool. That's not true. You call me out upon the waters, great unknown, the feet may fail, and there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. Do one more time. You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, feet may fail, and there I find you in the mystery, an ocean's deep, my faith will stand, and I'll call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, soar as your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine. If you want to stand, you can. It's okay. Grace from thousand deepest waters, sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you never fail, and you won't start now. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul rests in your embrace. But I am yours, and you are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters where
trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger. The presence of my Savior. Where can I run from your presence? Where can I flee from you? Even if I hide on the highest mountain, you are there. Where can I run from your presence? Where can I flee from you? Even if I lie in the lowest valley, you will find me there. Deeper than any ocean, your love goes on and on and on and on. Higher than any mountain, your love goes on and on and on and on. Your love goes on and on and on and on and on. There is no ending to your love that holds on, won't let go. Love that won't leave me on my own. I'm falling deeper into love that holds on, won't let go. Love that won't leave me on my own. There's no ending to your love that holds on, won't let go. Love that won't leave me on my own. I'm falling deeper into love that holds on, won't let go. Love that won't leave me on my own. Love, don't let me go, don't let me go. Love, don't let me go, don't let me go. Love, don't let me go, don't let me go. Love, don't let me go, don't let me go. There's nowhere I can run. There's nowhere I can hide. There's nowhere I can run that you won't find me, Lord. There's nowhere I can run. There's nowhere I can hide. There's nowhere I can go that you won't find me, Lord. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My faith will be made stronger. The presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior.
Will be blessed. All right. Is there a benediction?
Way to close out with the banger mashup. We plan that here at Oak Life. We like to be intentional. You know how we do.
Play it again.
Let us close with one voice, with the benediction together. I think maybe, almost. go. Let's keep going. That was last week. I forgot to erase the slides. There it is. There it is. God of love, may we be people who courageously walk the path of love, reflecting your heart to ourselves and others as we seek glimmers of heaven here on earth. Give us eyes and ears to sense your presence everywhere and hearts that break with what breaks yours. Be with us now as we go forth to love and serve the world in person or from a distance. Amen. Peace out, Oak Life.